Hi Simon, introduce yourself.
Right, I'm Simon Dye. I'm a film visual effects artist. Been in the industry for about 26 years. Worked on much advertising, telemovies, feature films. Yeah, it's been more than half my life, actually.
Cool. So how did you get into the visual effects industry?
I got into it sort of by accident in a way. I was a bit blessed. I worked in creative fields for early in my life. From 18, I did advertising for 4 years or so. Then I moved into doing photo retouching traditionally with a paintbrush and a scalpel and a week to spare until Photoshop had entered the market, and that changed it to about 8 jobs a day. But it was a program I instantly fell in love with. But that didn't last, unfortunately, in the job, so I ended up going to do traditional animation at just a government college, which was a 2 year course. But 6 months in, one of my lecturers told me to go for a traineeship that was being offered at the Movie World Film Studios
All right.
on the Gold Coast in Australia,
Fantastic.
with a company called Photon.
Were you the only one that got the offer, or?
No, it was quite a few people, I think, went for the position, but
Oh,
I got it, which was pretty handy. So yeah, that was my start, the first company that I got into.
okay. What would made you decide that you definitely want to be a compositor in the visual effects industry?
Well, it's what the job required, actually, the traineeship. But because I had come from a Photoshop, uh, early Photoshop background, which basically is compositing, but on still images, it fit that I would just continue that on into moving pictures, live action stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. So what was your top three movies you worked on and why?
Top three movies. Well, I've worked on a lot of stuff. Some different reasons, I guess. Lord of the Rings, the third of the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, just because it was my first freelance job. And it's obviously quite a huge feature. Couldn't really say no to that kind of job as my first freelance job. Other films were probably telemovies. One called Max Night Ultra Spy that I did at Movie World in Australia. I did a lot of the design of the effects and things like that as well, so that was fun.
What effects are we
Um,
talking about as such?
Effects, a guy, he had a cloaking ability so that he could sort of have a digital matrix over him and then become invisible
Uh-huh.
in the film. We could still see him. He sort of looks glassy, I guess, a bit see through, very see through.
Similar like the
But you could,
Predator in a way.
yeah, like,
Okay.
but more defined the shapes of his features rather than that repeating sort of pattern that the Predator was. It was, you could tell it was the actor, basically.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah, but you could see through him like he was sort of made of glass, I guess. And another film, it's hard to say. There's been a lot of good ones. Well, I'm currently working on one that's probably going to be the biggest film for this year, but I can't really go into that too much.
Would you like to tell us what
But
that is?
well, I'm not really allowed to at the
Okay.
moment.
All right. Fair
Not
enough.
for this anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I think Pirates of the Caribbean, that was an excellent film to have been part of as well, the third one at World's End. Just to see the quality actually of 3D animation from ILM in San Francisco. Sort of, I didn't have a lot to do as a compositor because it was pretty on the money for the 3D work. But yeah, that was good. I mean, there's been many more, but it's hard to
The pink, just
just
three.
pick
Yeah. I should have
specifics.
said
You know, Mad
five.
Max was great too. And
Mad Max, of
Harry
course.
Potter was good. And, you know.
Oh, I see. Okay. Next question. How would you describe compositing to a novice? The workflow, things to know, pros and cons, and such and such.
Well, compositing, I mean, know the general terminologies, I guess. To composite an image is a pretty straightforward thing to say. But compositing in film is to take elements from many different genres. Live action, if it is a live action film, but it may contain 3D characters or 3D or matte painted environments. It could contain effects like fire or rain or explosions, earthquakes, whatever. And being able to visually make those elements come together within colour and focus and motion of the camera. It depends on the complexity of the shot, but it's about being able to take multiple elements from different sources and put them together in a way that makes them look like they were filmed from the one camera.
Oh, I see. Oh, well, it's quite similar, but not the same. What advice would you give to up-and-coming compositors of tomorrow? Do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts. Do get into doing your own artwork, actually. Photography is a good thing, or just look at the world around you, actually. Think about how things visually choreographed, maybe. If you are doing photography, just taking a photograph is great, but often cropping it to maximize the story of the image can be a challenge, but it can be exciting. It can take boring photography and make it something that's really quite cool. And film stuff, actually. If you've got a smartphone, which most of us do, you can get really good quality filming out there now. You don't have to have a script or a story. Just film stuff. Look around you, see what's about. And watch movies. Educate yourself in the history of film. The blockbusters and everything that we watch today are excellent, of course, but often the story is a little lacking. But all of them have come from the legacy of film over history, and nothing's original. So try and find where it was original. The first people, George Millies out there, even later Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, they came up with techniques in filming. Disney had a whole bunch of amazing techniques they developed. Look into the history of film, because it has defined what film has become now. So you should never disregard it. As boring a black and white film may be, it's amazing what it can teach us about cinematography and just the general aspects of the visual aspects of filmmaking.
Alright, okay. And the don'ts? What?
Oh yeah, don'ts. Don't assume you know everything, actually. Because you've watched a video or two on YouTube's of training and things like that is not tantamount to becoming an expert. Do things rather than expect knowledge just to come from watching a couple of tutorials. Don't ever actually be told that you can't do anything in the industry, really, because it's visual effects, and when you look at some of the films out there now, we can make pretty much anything. So there's always a way of doing things, so don't be told you can't.
Excellent. Well, right now we're going to take a little break, 5-minute interval, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much. Hi Simon, welcome to round 2 of quick fire questions.
Hey.
Yeah, so how are you? Okay. So this is to do with your day, more or less. This one.
Sure.
What is your typical day like at the studio?
At this studio, I've been to many, and it's different. But ultimately, I'm a lead compositor on the current project. So, in the morning we will have a debrief session in the cinema, which will be talking about shots that may have gone to the client last night. And if they have approved them, fingers crossed, yay, then great. If not, then the visual effects supervisor and the compositing supervisor will tell us an interpretation of the client's changes and requirements. The shot may not be mine personally, but it may be of one of the artists in the team that is working on my sequence. So once I get that information, I'll go back to the floor and debrief that artist and tell them what they need to do to make adjustments to their shot, which at the moment I have 4 people on my team. So I'll jump through all of them. If the shot's been approved, I'll go and say, hey, well done, shot's been approved. Or if it's a specific bunch of corrections or changes. And then I'll get on to my own work, because I have shots as well. At the moment we do have a trailer delivery, so there are some shots that are much more important than others to get out by the end of the week. And I'll go through what's been rendered from the 3D department, what elements I have available for my shots, and then start to put them together within the composites. Hopefully get something together by the 2 o'clock dailies, so I can get the VFX supervisor to look at it and say yes or no. It's a lot of yes or no's, my day, basically. Yeah, and briefing other people or working on my own shots in the hope to get them finished as quickly as I can. And reviewed for corrections or approval.
I see. Okay. So describe what dailies are then, and why they are so important.
Dailies. We have several dailies during the day. One that I just mentioned, which is a debrief of the previous day's shots having gone to the client. And a dailies is when you sit in a cinema. We have 3 cinemas in the current company that I'm with. And they're all booked out for different groups, so we have to be in specific ones. But it is a cinema, or one of them is just a very large screen that we look at. And we go through every shot that has been put into the dailies list, which is defined by the lead compositor from the artists in their group.
Which is yourself.
I am the lead compositor, yeah. So I have a little playlist that the artists can put their shots into within the review tool that we use to look at every step of the way for every shot in the entire film. I have a playlist that is specifically for me to look in, and if there are shots of my sequence in there, I have a quick look at them. If there is anything that's glaring that I feel needs to be changed, I'll put notes on it, send that back to the artist, and they have things to work on, improve, or I'll go and talk to them. I prefer a one-to-one conversation, but putting notes in is good because it keeps it in the system, and then the producers and all of the coordinators know that more work needs to be done on the floor. But if it is good from me, I put it in the playlist that is for the visual effects supervisor and the compositing supervisor to look at in dailies. That is what we'll see in dailies on the big screen. They will decide whether or not it is good to then be sent to the client for them to talk about and discuss or hopefully approve. We do have several titles we put on the shots, which one is work in progress, everybody's favorite. That means you know you haven't finished it yet. It will come back. Or you can send it for first look, and that's where the client will see it probably for the first time. Hopefully it's in a good state and they can decide whether it's good or not or what needs to be changed. We can send it for final comments, which means the client's allowed to make changes and they are giving us the final comments on that shot for us to make those adjustments. So the next version is the final, and that's when they will go, yay, tick that off, and that's in my movie, thank you very much. But that's not often the case still.
Yes.
Final comments doesn't mean it's the final comments, but that's what dailies is for, is to look at all the shots and ascertain if they're ready for client viewing or we need to do more work in the studio.
I see. That's why it's so important. Okay. Describe, what aspects make you feel that what you're doing is rewarding in this industry? What are the rewarding parts?
Finishing a film, actually. A movie these days especially, it's a lot of people, it's a huge amount of collaboration. The steps in producing one individual shot are shared by many disciplines, and being able to all come together in a visual idea and achieve the look that is the director, obviously the director and the distributor like Warner Brothers or Disney or whoever it may be that's the big money, to say, yes, that will be in our film, that is an unbelievable feeling of achievement, really. And to see the film at the end. I've been doing this for a long time, and I have a lot of film credits, so my name at the end of a movie. That also is, of course, a pretty impressive thing. It builds one's self-esteem, I guess, and it's nice when somebody says that they saw a movie and they may have actually sat and waited to watch through the credits, which is a rare thing these days. That's why you have to do that in a Marvel movie, because they always put more of the movie after the credits. But if somebody says they saw me in the credits, then I know they felt cool because they know me. Yeah. And it makes me feel cool because, well, I did it. I am in the credits. So, you know, they're just two aspects, I guess.
Cool. And what are the disadvantages in this industry?
Ooh, we could get deep here. And
Please be deep.
I do speak from experience, actually. The industry, because I have been in it for quite some time, over 2 decades, it is, the terminology digital nomad is a very well-known, very widely used terminology for film artists, because we follow the work. And that means I've worked in 10 different countries, probably 14 different cities. You know, I've travelled the planet doing this, and to be realistic, at the expense of my family. Because my partner, back in the day, the mother of my children, wasn't part of this industry. You know, she didn't come, and I was away all the time, and it had become a casualty for me. And I do know many people who have had the same unfortunate circumstances come about. Film's a hard one, because it's hard not to be engrossed in it and feel that it's an important thing to be part of. Not more than your family, of course, but it sort of does become that, because the industry doesn't care so much about you as a personal human. You're part of a big machine making a film. So you have to be prepared, I think, for the fact that you may not be with your loved ones as much as you want to be. You have to travel to continue working on high profile films, if that's what you're doing. Yeah, you can become a bit of a casualty of the industry because of that. I mean, on the flip side, though, every country I go to and every company I work at, I'll see somebody that I worked with years ago in another country. It does make the world a small place, and you meet beautiful people everywhere you go. So, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I see. Okay. And lastly, who famous have you met in the film industry that you admire, and who are your inspirations within the industry?
Actually, as a compositor and being a post-production artist, you don't really get to meet many of the stars or the directors or, you know, the people that are the draw cards for the film. But, I mean, outside of it, I did meet Ray Harryhausen, actually. He came to see us at Photon one time. And Ray Harryhausen, for those who are uneducated, get educated, please. He did Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans, some very early visual effects films, and he's a stop motion artist. He did the original King Kong film, actually. That was unfortunately Adolf Hitler's favourite film, but he did the stop motion for it. And to meet him was, I don't know, pretty groundbreaking as an icon of very early filmmaking, visual effects filmmaking. I did also meet Dennis Muren, who is a unbelievable animation artist with ILM in America. You should look him up, and when you read about him, you go, oh yeah, sweet, I know this guy. That was pretty cool. Yeah, like I said, being post-production, you don't meet a lot of the people who are really the stars or the draw cards. But they were two great people. George Lucas. I did actually meet George Lucas at a big party at ILM they were having for Pirates of the Caribbean 2 because they won an Academy Award for the visual effects of Davy Jones, the 3D they did for that. And so he threw this massive party at ILM which had Chewbacca and Boba Fett and Stormtroopers walking around, as you would, I guess, because, you know, you're a billionaire that can do that kind of crap. But and I didn't talk with him much, but I did meet him. We had a little, just a hi, how you doing kind of thing. And I've met others as well. Zack Schneider, he came into dailies one time when we were doing Sucker Punch in Australia, and he loved my shot with several expletives in his appreciation. So that was fun. And if anyone changed my shot after that, I'd meet him out in the back lane. But, you know, yeah, so I haven't met many, really. On set, you see actors, of course, and they have to perform their tasks, but you don't really get the time to chat with them as such. Your visual effects, your post-production, you are the thing that makes their shit look good. So they film it and go away and spend their millions, and then we spend our hours, days, lives, nights making them look good in their films. So, you know, we're behind the scenes, really. And you've got to be okay with that. If you're not, become a director.
Cool. And lastly, tell us about the Afterlife game and film that you was in charge of recreating.
Half-Life,
sorry.
Yeah,
Half-Life.
Half-Life.
My bad. Half-Life.
No, Half-Life. Half-Life is a game that is pretty instrumental in the game industry. Half-Life has been...
the film, actually. What's
the
name of the film?
Well, the name of the film I did was Max Knight Ultra Spy, which I think I mentioned before is one of my favourite films to ever have worked on.
Yeah.
Because I designed pretty much all the effects for it and made them as well. Or articulated what I needed to the team of people that I worked with, which wasn't big, actually, at the time. But within the film, Zack and Max... Max the hero and Zack the antagonist of the film. Zack is trying to get everybody to go into the internet. We basically all live in cyberspace within the film. One section of it, they both go into the game Half-Life. And in the script, it said, Zack and Max enter Half-Life. Zack and Max exit Half-Life. There was nothing as to what do they do in Half-Life. So, they said, make something up, please, which was brilliant, actually. I had no idea what I was doing. I played a lot of games, but I'd never really made my own on that level. But I did. Valve is the company that made Half-Life, and I was in contact with them. They gave me some editing softwares, Unreal Ed and Milkshape for doing character animation for games. And I spent about a month building a level, making the characters look like the heroes of the film. Exporting models so that our 3D team, or one guy in particular, Mike Holzel, who became animation head of Rhythm and Hues, could animate things specifically for the script, which then I would composite into backgrounds that I had built and rendered in the game engine, so it all looked like it was all within the game. I ended up making a sequence that went for 4 minutes using all cameras and triggers from the actual game engine. So, but I had to play the game and film it off the screen, which was not a challenge, but an interesting thing to have to do. Yeah, it was excellent. It's like nothing I'd ever done before, to have to come up with a whole filmic experience within a game. I made a 4-minute sequence which they cut down to about 1.5 minutes in the actual film, but it was fun. Yeah, it was probably one of the most challenging but rewarding things, because it was an environment that I really had never done before, but did it incredibly well and successful, and it ended up being in the film. Now, the film wasn't fantastic and it didn't win awards or anything. It was in a telemovie, American telemovie for I think it was Coot Hayes Productions. But just the process was wonderful, to have to create something from scratch with nothing, not even an idea of what the story was meant to be. So, you know, that was fun. I really did enjoy that. And since then, I mean, I still play games, and I am evolving in my interest in making games too, because that's part of coming up with the visual aspects of compositing. It's how to choreograph scenes, put them all together so that they tell a story and look cool if possible. So yeah, that was a good start many years ago.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Simon.
Thanks.
Thank you
Jay.
for taking part in this interview.
Yeah,
And
no worries.
it's been a really good experience, an eye opener for many. And yeah, and we would like to one day have you come give a tour sometime. But yeah, if you got the time. But yeah, it's been amazing, and thank you for education. Thank you.
No worries. Have fun. No worries. Have fun. No worries.